Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. I am Julian. I am your host for the DxO Live of today. I'm very happy to see you again for a new live session organized by DxO. First of all, I wanted to apologize to all of you because we were supposed to have this live session 3 hours ago, but to tell the truth, my computers went completely crazy. It nearly burned next to me, so I had to turn off the light. And now we are back. Everything is working much better, and I think everything will run very smoothly. So we haven't seen each other for quite a long time now, and so we wanted to start again this live session with you and to propose you a new kind of live. So tonight we're gonna, or today or this morning, it depends where you are on this planet. We're gonna talk about DxO PhotoLab 5, and for this occasion, I have the pleasure to welcome Mr. PhotoJoseph. Most of you, and I'm sure you know him very well, because he's making great webinars for DxO, and he's been doing this amazing video for us for quite a long time now. And I'm gonna let him joining me, and he's gonna tell you who he is, what he's doing, much better than I can do. Hello, Joseph.
Good morning, or I suppose good evening for you. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, and it's evening for in Paris. The night is coming right now, so when I will leave the office, it will be nighttime. But and I think for you, it's the beginning of the day.
Absolutely. So are we ready to get into this? Should we
I
just
think
jump right in?
yes, definitely. So the topics of the day, it's talking about landscape photography and how to get better pictures. So maybe we will give you some little tips at the end of this live about what you should start with when you go on a trip and you want to make some landscape photography, which is very important. What lens, what material you should put in your bag. But now we're going to
Certainly.
mainly focus on some of the key features of the DxO PhotoLab 5 that we released nearly 3 weeks, a month ago now. And I think you're going to share your screen and explain us how to get better pictures with all these new features that we have.
Yeah.
So, guys, enjoy it. You have the best person in front of you to explain the DxO PhotoLab 5. I'm going to be next to you, Joseph. I mean, next to you, but very far from you in the same time. But I will take care of all the questions that we have, and I will maybe interrupt you during your explanation just to make sure that we answer all the questions. Enjoy it, and it's your turn, Joseph.
All right. Thank you. And yes, to everybody who's watching live, thank you for joining us. If you do have questions while I'm going, just drop them into the chat. Either Julian will answer them for you in text, or if it's something that needs to be addressed directly, he'll just interrupt me and we'll try and get those questions answered for you. So today we're focusing on landscape photography. Needless to say, everything that I show you can apply to any type of photo, but we're going to be using some landscape photos. And we're going to start with some very basic corrections, showing some of the original tools inside of PhotoLab, because of course, when it comes to editing your photos, it's never all just about the new tools. It's all about all the tools that we have. So we're going to be taking a pretty high level approach to begin with, and then get a little bit more granular in the photo adjustment. I have 3 different photos to work with. We'll see if we can actually get to all of them in time here, but I've got a lot of really fun stuff to show you for the first photo specifically. So let's just go ahead and jump into that. If you want to put my screen up there, Julian, we'll get this thing
Yes,
started.
definitely. There you
Alrighty, here is the photo that I'm going to start with. This is a raw photo, of course, shot on a Panasonic S1R, so that's the high resolution full frame camera. You can see the lens information here. This is the 24 to 105 millimeter zoom lens. And of course, it's a raw photo. And this was probably shot all the way out at 24 millimeter, I'm going to guess. You can see here what I'm trying to achieve with this photo. A beautiful early morning. We got the cows kind of silhouetted on here. Great end of a sunrise. Wasn't out quite early enough to get a really pretty sunrise, but sun's just coming up over the horizon here. And this cool little river in the front that's getting a nice reflection from the sky. So altogether, some pretty good elements in here for a pretty nice photo. Since I'm pointing straight into the sun, we are obviously going to have some limitations on recovery. I'm not going to be able to recover highlights from right into the middle of the sun. We know that going into it. but it's meant to be this kind of high key, slightly washed out, straight into the sun photo. So the first thing I want to look at is what PhotoLab has done to this already. Because remember, when you first start in PhotoLab, you are applying what is effectively, if I go into the presets, a DxO standard preset. This is where your photos by default start. If I went to no correction, we would see what the image looked like more straight out of camera, but PhotoLab does apply a variety of corrections automatically to it. And if I hit the reset button, it's going to bring us back to that starting point. So we're seeing the work that it's done. And you could already see a little bit of distortion correction there, which is where I want to start. So I have a few of my adjustments here that I've favorited so I can get to them quickly. Just incidentally, to do that, if you click on a little star next to any one of these, that makes it a favorite. And then when I click on this star button here, it filters to just show me my favorites. And the nice thing you'll see here too is when you do that, every one of these is opened. If I turn that back off, most of these are closed. I guess all of them are closed right now. Oh, no, there's one that's open, but they might be open, might be closed, depending on where I was before. However, when I go into one of the filtering modes, they all open up for me, making it really easy to find what I'm looking for. So I'm going to start with this right here, the distortion. The correction is currently set to based on DxO module, and the intensity is all the way up. And if I grab this slider and I drag it down, you'll see the lens correction that the module has done. And it's pretty pronounced. You know, at this point, if I drag it down here and we just started here, you probably wouldn't look at this photo and think, oh, that looks distorted. I mean, it looks fine, right? And part of that is because I kept the horizon line very much centered and even. If the camera had been at a bit of an angle, we would definitely see that distortion more. But since it's pretty much level in here, we're not really seeing much distortion. But if we correct it, then it kind of looks a little bit better. But sometimes it doesn't matter, right? If I look at this photo and if I'm happy with the way it is here, then I actually might want to work this way because look at the edges here. I have more cows. There's more of the photo in here than when I correct it, we actually end up losing a little bit. But before I really make a decision on there, I do want to make sure that my horizon is truly even. That's important to me. So I'm going to grab the horizon tool and you get this line that pops up. And now I can very easily take this and stretch it out really wide and make sure that I truly have a straight horizon. And we can already see there that it looks like I wasn't actually as straight as I thought I was. So let's just get that right level, right about so. I'll click apply and it does a slight rotation to the image. And we can see here how the image has now been cropped to ensure that I don't have black borders. I mean, if you look up here at the top, if I didn't have it cropped, we'd have these funny black borders on the sides and the tops here. Clearly, I don't want automatically cropped in to ensure that that is not happening. But you can also see that there's some image getting cropped out on the edge here on both sides. And if I take my distortion slider and I drag that down more, then we might see more or less, depending on the photo, of that coming in there. So I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that all the way down, and then I'm going to manually crop this so that I can ensure that I get as much information as possible. So if I go to the crop tool right now, and I just start cropping it, it's going to maintain the original aspect ratio of the photo. But I don't care about the original aspect ratio. So I'm going to go over here and turn off. I'm going to just set it to unconstrained for the crop. So now that means that I can adjust this, and you see it actually automatically popped out to give me a few more pixels there. I can manually adjust this to ensure that I'm not getting any of the black borders in there, but I'm maximizing the pixels that I'm using. And again, the aspect ratio has now technically changed, but I don't care because I just want as many pixels as possible. I don't care if it's a 2x3 or 3x4 or whatever. It doesn't matter to me. Okay, so now we're off to a great start. I've got a nice, clean, straight horizon. I've undistorted the picture, but you can't tell. And I've got a little bit more cow on the sides, which, is always good, right? Okay, so now I'm going to go into adjustments. The first thing that I always do with a photo like this is go to my exposure compensation, grab the exposure slider, and just drag it up and down to see what I'm working with. I want to know how much data I have. So focusing on the highlights to start. If I pull this down and down and down, we see tons of detail up here in the clouds. But we also see here in the center of the sun that we're clearly not going to ever recover data out of there, right? Oops, wrong button there. If I take that all the way down, we are definitely not going to recover, some great edges in here just because it's blown out. I mean, come on, the camera's pointed right at the sun. But it's good to know what is and isn't there. And if I go the other direction on here, take it up a bit, you'll see here that I've got some detail in the shadows in here, but not a whole lot, again, because that flare from the sun. So I'm not going to try and recover a bunch of information out of the shadows in here, but I might want to pull some stuff out of the highlights. Okay, good to know. These things are all very good to know. So I'm going to just do another reset. Oh, actually, let me undo that. Didn't mean to reset. Ooh, and I guess I can't. Well, that was a good start. So let's just redo all that work real quick, very quickly here. Change that horizon back to straight. Did not mean to hit that reset button. Apply that and redo my crop. So I guess it's a good example to show how quickly this can go when you're not actually talking your way through it. Unconstrained, get that crop back a little bit. Let me take this down just a hair here. Go a little bit wider off to the side here. We'll pull a hair off of the bottom and call it a day. All right, good. Now we're back to where I started. Whew. Okay, so again, making the changes in the exposure slider just to see what I do and don't have in there, but I don't actually want to make changes in there. It's just about seeing what I do and don't have. So now let's start actually making adjustments to the image. I'll start with the smart lighting. It's a good way to play with it and see what we can do. Sometimes it makes it really easy to just kind of drag that up and get a better exposure out of the image. And by doing that, we're seeing some really nice things happening in the clouds up here. The bottom part's getting a little bit flatter, if you will, which I don't really want, but I do like what's happened in the sky. So I'm going to leave that where it is at the sky. But then I'm going to go down to my selective tones here and maybe pull my midtones. I want to build them down, up. Sometimes you just got to go back and forth and see what looks better. Just pulling those up a little bit and then my shadows down a touch, add a little bit more contrast into there. Yeah, there we go. And we're getting somewhere. Okay, kind of like where that's going. Highlights, do I want to pull that down a little bit? Probably not. So again, it's just about playing, dragging those sliders back and forth, trying to figure out what looks better than what looks better with what slider in what position. My black slider, do I want to bring that down? Pretty quickly, I'm going to discover that I don't, because as soon as I do, I really start to crunch down the black points in the shadow areas here. So I definitely don't want to do that. So we'll put the black point back where it was, and let's get that up there. And Julian, you want to mute your mic? I'm getting a lot of mic noise from you. And let's just drag that back into place there. There we go. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I think we've got a pretty good start here. If I toggle the selective toning on and off, it's not a massive change that's happening in here, but it's all about subtlety. That's all about subtlety and finding just the right amount of corrections to do. All right, next up, let's play with the color. It's gotten a little undersaturated. I want to pump the saturation up a little bit. I don't actually have my saturation selected in here. So what I'll do is turn off my favorites, go up here to search for corrections, because let's just say that I don't know where saturation is. I'm going to type in saturation in here, and there it is right at the top, color accentuation. Let's go ahead and add that to my favorites, because I think that's a good one to have in there. And now with that in place, I can go ahead and make, there it is, and add some saturation in there. Let's pump that up a bit. And I can definitely get, actually I can go pretty far with this, can't I? I can get pretty far with the greens and the blues in there. Maybe I'll bring my midtones up a little bit more now that I'm adding the saturation. See if I can get a little bit more brightness out of that. Yeah, I think we're getting pretty good there. All right, so now we're off to a pretty good start. If we do a compare back to the original, you can see where we started and where we are now. It's definitely a big improvement in here. But I want to do some more to the sky, and I'm really going to have to take care of this kind of blown out section here, which again, I want it to be blown out, but it's not looking so good here with these funny edges. So I'm going to want to take care of both of those things. To do this, I'm going to go into local adjustments. And now I'm going to use one of the new tools in local adjustments, and that is the new control line. Now, just in case this is the first time you've seen this, control points, which you are undoubtedly familiar with, allow me to define an area to adjust based off of wherever I drop the control point. So if I dropped it like on the sky right here, it would make a circular selection around where I dropped it, and it would build a mask based off of that blue sky. The control line is the same idea, except that it's kind of a combination of a linear gradient. So there's my linear gradient, and a mask that is built based off of chrominance and luminance, color and saturation, or color and brightness, just like with the control points. But I choose that point with the eyedropper here. Now let's turn on the mask so we know exactly what's being selected. And as I drag this eyedropper around, it is building a mask based off of wherever I drop that. So let's just put it there up in the sky. And then to refine that, let's go over here to my local adjustments tools here. To refine that, I can increase or decrease the chrominance and the luminance part of the mask on there. So basically saying, give me a mask that's based off of a narrower range of color, a narrower range of brightness, or a broader one. So we want to find just the right combination here that gives me the sky and a nice softening into the clouds. We don't want to have, see if I go too far, we get these kind of weird edges on the clouds. We definitely don't want that because that'll show up strangely in the adjustments. So we find our nice little balance in there and build that mask. And let's say probably right about there, I think is looking pretty good. there. Yep, I like that. Okay, let's turn off the mask view. And now if I go in and make adjustments to it, like let's say I want to darken the blue sky, I'll go ahead and drag the exposure down on the blue sky in there, and we can see how that's darkening in there. It's looking pretty good. And because it is this gradient, I'm actually affecting the image 100% on this side of the line, 0% on this side of the line, and then just like a linear gradient, in combination with the mask, it is going from this line to this line. So I think that's looking pretty good. I can actually, let me drag this up a little bit. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that fall off a little bit more subtle overall. So we're making it nice and a little bit darker up at the top, but fading out towards lighter at the bottom, which makes sense. Maybe I've overdone it a bit. Let's dial that up a little bit. Okay, that's pretty good. I like the way the sky looks there. Now let's take care of the sun. I'm going to create a new mask. Incidentally, this is really important. If I go in here and I just grabbed a new control point now and I added it to the image, it would be combining that control point with the control line that I just did. I don't want that. I want a whole new one. So I'm going to go down here and say new mask. And now I'm starting over again. And let's go back to control point. And I'm going to drop it right on the center of the sun here. And let's make this a little bit bigger. And because I want to blow out all these edges in here to make sure I don't have this weird edging from the clouds, I'm actually going to crank the exposure up. So it's kind of the opposite of what you might expect. We're not trying to recover. We're actually purposefully blowing it out, but doing it in a very nice, subtle, gradated way. And then I think a little bit of warmth is in order here because we have this really nice, warm morning light. So let me go over here to the color adjustments. I'm going to take my color temperature slider, crank that towards yellow, and add some really nice warmth into that. And really, oh, let's just really do it. Look at that. Beautiful. Is that too much? I mean, it might be a little. Let's back it off a touch, a little bit. Let's say right about there. I like that. So now if we do a compare, let me close out of this. I've got a really nice blowout of the sun there. It's nice and warm. I suppose it might be a little bit too much still. I probably could back that off a touch. But we have this really nice, beautiful, believable look in there. So I'm definitely digging that. All right, let's do one more thing. I want to try and adjust the water down here. So I adjusted the clouds up here, and let me go back into my local adjustments, and I'm going to back that off just a touch because I do feel like it's a little bit too strong what I did in there. Back that up a little bit. There we go. Now let's see if I can select the water down here in this little stripe of water here. The reflection of the clouds in the sky in this little strip of water. So once again, I'm going to create a new mask. And this is going to be a control line again. And it might take a little bit of playing to figure out what the right way to do this is. If I just do a simple control line like this, we are now effectively covering everything on this end at 100%. And I guess I should get that up a little higher, maybe rotate that just a little bit. Try and follow the edge of the river there. Should be, that should work pretty well. And I'm going to build that mask based off of the blue in the water. So let's go ahead and show the masks on there. And let's see what we're getting. For some reason, things are taking a moment to redraw here today. Don't know what that's all about. And masks, hello. We would like, there it is. And that's actually pretty good. We've got a really nice mask of just the water in there. It's, I was thinking I might have to do some other kind of canceling on this side. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll do a negative control line over here to really isolate the water. But let's just see if I can isolate the water further using the mask selectivity. And wow, looks like I really can. So that's working out quite nicely there. Let's just add a little negative control line in there just because we can. So I'm going to combine this with a negative control line. And this is going to be a little bit funny. I'm actually going to go the same direction that I did before, but then take the eyedropper and drag it down here into the grass. And so I'm kind of overlapping these two. And now you can see I've got a really clean, just the water mask built in here. So now let's go ahead and turn off the masks. And let's go in here and make some adjustments. I need to make that a little bit darker because I want it to match the top of the sky that I added up there. So too far there. Let's back that off a little bit. There we go. Made that water a little bit darker. Maybe add a little saturation into that. Here's take the saturation up just a touch on there. And yeah, I think that works pretty darn good. All right, let's close that. There's, I think, a final image. We'll do a compare back and forth. And yeah, that is a big, huge improvement. So your original one there with all of the geometry taken out, all of the adjustments taken out, down to this one where it's looking pretty darn good. Maybe I'd pull up my shadows a little bit more in the foreground, but I think we're off to a good start. Maybe that yellow is a little strong in the sky, but I like it. I like it. So I'm going to leave it there. We're going to call that done. So there is a huge combination of tools to adjust this image in there, maintaining that really nice high key, high contrast, kind of blown out look. But we've got that really nice warmth from the sun in there, really illuminating the front of the grass on here, silhouetting those the cows in there and so on. I think it looks great. Okay, that's image number one. Let's move on now to this one here. This is going to be a much quicker image to work with. This is a sunrise photo. And it's funny because when I shot this, in my mind's eye, it looked very, very different. And I remember when I first shot this, playing with the adjustments, going, you know, what am I missing? What is wrong with this photo? It turns out the photo is just massively overexposed. Look at the histogram, it looks fine. I mean, this looks like a very clean histogram. I'm not blowing out my highlights in the sun in here. It actually looks really great, but it's just not how I remember it. But if I go up here and I take my exposure and I drag this down quite a bit, then I go, oh, there we go. That is what I saw when I stood there early in that morning. That was more the photo that I shot. Have this crazy orange sunrise, the really nice silhouetting of the trees in here, a little bit of light hitting the mountains on there. All looks pretty darn good, except the foreground here. I want that grass. It's totally gone. If we go back to the original, let me just turn off the exposure. There's some nice grass in here that I feel like, I want some of that to show up in here. So let's do that with another control line. Go into the local adjustments, go to control line here, and I really just want to hit the grass. So we'll make sure that if there's anything else that gets picked up, we fade off nicely with that. Let's go ahead and turn on the masks, take my eyedropper and drag this down in here onto the grass. And just like with control masks or control points before, where you drop that selection point is very important. So you see here, it's got a nice selection of the grass. I move just a tiny bit and suddenly it's too much. So it really is often a case of just kind of drag and dropping this around until you find a point that's really close to what you want, and then further refining that using the new Chroma and Luma mask selectivity tools. So I'm going to guess it's probably a little bit of Chroma in there that needs, yep, look at that, pulling that down nicely. The Luma, can I refine it even more? Yeah, there we go. Looking pretty good. Let's rotate this just a little bit more in there. I'm just selecting that grass. I think that looks pretty good. Let's turn off the masks, go into the adjustments here and take the exposure up just a touch on there. And there we go. Look at that. We're bringing some of that into it. Can I bring up the highlights? There's not a lot of highlights in here to work with, so I might not do much with the highlights. No, it definitely just needs some base exposure, but I can really refine that. And of course, if I want to, I can go back in here and while I'm looking at the image, continue to adjust the mask itself. I don't have to do that while I'm in the mask view. I can do it while I'm looking at the image, which of course is probably a good idea just to really ensure that you are fully aware of what you're adjusting and dial that in. There we go. I like that. So now I've got that foreground in there. If I turn that off, you can see the difference there before and after for that foreground. And that is the photo that I remember taking. So that's where I want to be on there. I think I'm good with this. Maybe we'll do a little bit of adjustment to the sky here as well. Let's go ahead and add another control, actually linear gradient. We're just going to go for a whole new mask. I'm going to do a basic linear gradient, graduated filter, nothing fancy here. Just a simple one across the sky on there. And then I'm going to go into where is the micro contrast here and pull up some of this crazy texture in the clouds. Look at that. There we go. If you look closely here, let's go into 100%. It's wild. I don't even know what this is called, but look at the way the clouds have all these lines on them. That was just again, some natural phenomenon. I just thought it was so cool in there, the way that showed up. And we can really accentuate that by adding a little bit of micro contrast. So there we go. I think that is pretty darn good. Let's back out of that. And I love it. And of course, remember, if you wanted to take some noise out of this, because it is looking a little bit noisy where I pumped up the shadows in there, I can add some denoising using the prime denoising tool. So we're going to leave it at that one for now. All right, now let's move on to the final photo. This one here, this waterfall picture. So my reset, I am. Okay, so we got a really nice overall photo. Overall, I think everything's pretty darn good here. Just straight at a camera, it's looking pretty nice. But, let's see if we can make it even better. First thing I want to do is worry about the straightening. I'm looking at the photo, I'm like, is it straight? This part of the building is not vertical. Should this be vertical? I'm not really sure exactly what should be vertical. Should that be horizontal? Probably not. So I'm going to go with a vertical idea here. And let's do that by going back into that straightening tool, the horizon tool. But the horizon tool doesn't have to just work horizontally. You can actually rotate this And then it automatically just knows to become a straightening vertically tool. So let's go in here. I'll actually go in a little bit closer on this and really make sure that I'm lined up on the edge of that building in there. Now, here's an important point. Just because it's technically accurate, as it's about to be, doesn't necessarily mean it's right. Sometimes you look at that and you go, "Well, I kind of want it to be leaning just a little bit off. Like it feels a little bit too straight in there." So let's go ahead in here and where's my horizon adjustment in there? There it is. See, it was only rotated by minus 1.01. It wasn't very much, but I'm going to kind of split the difference in there. Let's just call it a minus 0.5 and just split the difference on there. And yeah, maybe let's go minus 0.7 there. That just feels better to me. Even though it may not be technically accurate, it just feels better. So I'm going to go with that to start. All right, now let's start adjusting the colors of the image themselves. Let's go back into the exposure settings here, and let's just see what I've got. I don't need to do my whole, let's take the exposure slider up and down to see what I do and don't have, because the whole image is quite well exposed. We don't really have anything blown out except for these highlights in the water, and that's great, the specular highlights in there. So I'm not going to play with that, but I might want to do some mid-tone raising, highlight lowering. I don't know. We're just going to play with them and see what we've got. So go into my selective tones, maybe pull up the shadows. Do I want to do that? Yeah, a little bit. Not too much. Kind of like a little bit of contrast down at the bottom. But the midtones, yeah, those can come up a bit. So that's looking pretty good. Um, this area here now, I feel like it's too bright. My eye is just going up here. So now I want to darken this part of the scene. All right, so how are we going to do that? If I go into local adjustments, am I going to use a control point? Well, not really, because I've got green foliage and blue sky. I want all that to be darkened. We control line? Well, no, again, I don't want to isolate just the sky or the trees in there. So that's not really right. Graduated filter? Well, no, because it's not the whole top half of it. So what am I going to use? Well, we're just going to go old school, man. We're just going to use a brush. Old school brush. We don't have to get fancy in here. We just have a nice big feathered brush. This goes super big on the feathering on here. Let's make it a little bit bigger in size. My flow and opacity are up at 100%, and I can turn on my masks if I want so I see where I'm painting. And I'm just going to paint over this part of the image, just really nice and big and soft in there. Let's hide that mask now, and let's just pull that down a little bit. Just a little. Pull that down. There we go. Old school. You know, it's easy to get caught up in all the new tools and be like, oh, how am I going to use the control line? It's not always the right tool to use. Sometimes you just want to go old school and just use a little bit of a brush in there. So there we go. Pulled that down. I think that's already looking better. Now, though, let's get fancy with the new tools. Let me go in and add a new mask. And this time I'm going to use a control point and see how there's I can't call it a splash of sunlight, but it's a little bit brighter here on the tree. I kind of like that. And I want to accentuate that. So I'm going to drop a control point, and let's take a look at the mask that I'm building. Always important to do that. And see what I've got. So like right there, see, that would not be good because I'm selecting too much other stuff. I really just want the foliage. So there we go. Pretty good on the foliage in there. Let's just start with that as it is. And I'll take my highlights in here and pull that up and brighten up those highlights a little bit, maybe even the midtones a touch in there. Oop, that's the contrast. Bring up where are we? There we go. The midtones up a little bit in there, just to add a little bit of a splash of light to the foliage in there. I kind of like that. I think I think that works out pretty well. And while that's on, I can drag this around to see what it's affecting. So let's go right about like so. Okay, digging that. Same thing over here, but I think actually I want to darken this. So let's create another new control point, new mask, new control point, drop that on here. I'm not even going to bother looking at the mask. I think if I just pull the exposure down, yep, that's going to work out great on there. So that's good. So now I've got a little bit brighter over here, a little bit darker down here. What else do I want to do? Maybe I want to make the red building stand out a little bit more. So how am I going to do that? Well, I could do this with a control point. Let's go back to the new mask, control point, and select, let's say, kind of right in the middle of that red building there. Let's make this nice and big and look at the mask. And from the mask here, we can see that while I'm doing a pretty good job of selecting the red building, you can definitely see it's affected more here than it is on the edge, because that's how control points work. But I want to affect the whole red building evenly. So let's scratch this. Let me delete that guy and now use a control line. And I'll draw the control line kind of across the bottom here and move the eyedropper up to the top. And let's take our mask controls, pull the chroma in a little bit, and very quickly, we can build a very nice mask that really just hits the red of the building. Even though technically the mask is affecting all of this over here, it's not. I mean, there's so little of it showing up that it just doesn't matter. The red building is what's being affected, and that's what I want. So let's turn off the masks. And now what I want to do with this, do I want to brighten it? Maybe let's try that. We'll brighten it up a little bit. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Brightening up a little bit, maybe add a little bit of saturation into that. Let's pump that up a little bit, give it that good old kind of red barn feel, really nice, bright, rich red on there. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. And yeah, actually, I quite like that. Maybe maybe made it a little bit too bright. Let's pull it down just a touch. There we go. Yeah, that's looking good. All right, cool. Digging where that's going. By the way, over here, you see all my different control points and lines and masks that I've built. Remember, you can rename these. So the brush here, let's go ahead and rename that. We're going to call this the, what is this? The sky and trees. Oop, tress. That's close enough. And let's see, this one was the bush. Let's see, let's call that the front right bush. And this one was the one on the left. So we're going to call that the left. We'll call this foliage. And then the control line at the top, that was the red building. So renaming these can be really, really handy. It also makes it easy to remember which ones you're working with. So if you want to toggle one on and off just to get a quick preview with and without that, you can do that. You're not guessing which one's which. So renaming those is definitely worth doing. Let's see here. The last thing I want to do is work with the water. The water down here is like this water is beautiful, right? Everything's beautiful. This water down here is just a little bit murky and kind of gray. So let's see if we can change that a little bit. I think what I'll do is go in and create another new mask, and we're going to do control line again. And let's just get that bottom of the water. Grab the eyedropper down here. We'll go into show masks and make sure that I'm really just affecting the water. And I'm definitely going to need to play with the mask selectivity. It's amazing how much you end up using this tool now that you've got it. The ability to really isolate what part of the mask is being, what part of the image is being masked out. So let's get that. Let's see, let me pull this down a little bit in here. I'm just trying to get that kind of pond area of the water in here. Pull that down a little bit more. Let's get that up like so. I'm gonna keep on. Maybe I need to move this eyedropper around. Sometimes, don't forget, you've got multiple things to work with. You can move the eyedropper around to sample from a different starting point. Well, that's definitely getting better. We've got our mask selectivity to refine or expand the area that is being affected. I think that's looking pretty good on there. Let's turn this off and see what we've got. And now, let's see here. My midtones are all down on there for some reason. Let's take this and let's cool that water, blue that water by adding a little bit of color temperature shift into it. There we go. Look at that. We've just made that water a little bit bluer by tricking it with a little bit of color temperature compensation. And now, there we go. And now let's call that, my red building's off. Let's turn that, or call that the blue water. And now if I toggle that on and off, let's go ahead and close out of here. If I toggle that on and off, we can see that we've added a nice little bit of bluing in there. Looks like I've got some area here that I might want to remove, but I think that is looking pretty darn good. So let's do a compare to the original. There's the original image and the adjusted one. The original and adjusted. I think that is pretty darn good. I don't know about you guys, but I like it. Okay, those are the 3 images. We actually got through all 3 of them. That's fantastic. Let's see if there's any questions that need answering, and then bring this thing home.
Yeah, right. So first of all, thank you for all these tips, and I might be one of the first person that I'm gonna use them tonight once I'm home, and night is already here for me. Well, we didn't have a lot of questions, but we've got one from Cell Tomlock asking.
Why don't you bring us back up on
Oh
screen?
yes,
We're
I
still
can
looking at
do
it.
that. So I think I can put it on the screen if it works. There we go. Can you see it?
I see the question. So while you're playing with that, oh, the question went away.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to put it back.
There we go. On PC, there are none of the controls on the lower taskbar, plus and minus control points in mask. I have heard that before, but I'm a pure Mac user, so I don't know.
Well, I'm a pure Mac
These have to
user
be there. It's
too.
an integral part of the app. Where would they be if they're not showing up?
Well, I'm a bit like you. I'm using Macintosh and I don't have the answer right now, but I'm going to make sure that I will have the answer later on and I will put it in the comment section.
Yeah, somebody asked that on my YouTube channel as well, and I'm not a PC user, so I don't know, but I mean, it has to be there. It's an integral part of how these work. Let's see here. If you hit, what is it? I don't remember the trying to remember the keyboard shortcut to bring up the tools. It's got to be there. Yeah, you'll find out. I don't know the answer to that. I'm very
Yeah,
sorry.
it's somewhere. It's somewhere. There's a shortcut to find them, and I'm going to double check that to make sure we give the answer.
Maybe you can figure that out while we're on the show. If you want to bring up another question, I can address that.
If we have another question, well, not that much. We had some people just talking about the sound, that your sound was very good and my voice was very low, and that's all we have tonight for the question. Not many,
Okay.
but what I can say, it's for those who want to learn more about the control points. I think
We still have my screen up. If you want to
yeah,
switch that
okay,
back over.
okay. Let's go back on you and
There we go.
I. Okay, so I can see myself, and it's better
There we go.
to see yourself too when I'm talking. So it was a short live session, but in 10 days, more or less 10, 11 days, you have upcoming webinars with DxO, and where you're going to be talking about control lines with the skies and the control points, also with DxO PhotoLab 5. So this is one of the main new features, the control lines. And once you start knowing how to use them properly, it's true that it's something very amazing. And the more you use them, the more you take pleasure to edit your picture, and it can be something very quick to edit once you know exactly how to use them. So we've got this webinar coming on November 29, and then we will have another webinars also a bit different, because you're going to be talking about DxO Film Pack 6, which is a big thing if you like analog rendering on your pictures. So I'm sure that it will be a great webinar too.
Absolutely.
And we will have also another live session, more or less 2-3 weeks times. We have to talk about it, Joseph, to make sure that our schedules are working well together, and I'm sure we will find something to do.
Great.
We will inform everybody on social network, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. So more new things to come for you, and 2 new webinars. And I did put the link in the comment section. So if you want to subscribe to the webinars, you can do so, and you will have a longer explanation on all these tools, and I'm sure it will be great. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
So I'm just reading if some of the people that just checked, it's not there. This is from Florian. I think Florian is in France. Maybe local adjustment is off. That would make the lower toolbar disappear. And we've got Steph Ballet saying above the image? Question. So we're going to check that. Anyway, we're going to make sure, because this is true that you are using Macintosh. I'm using Macintosh, so I'm not used to PC. But we really want to make everyone's happy. So I'm going to dig tonight and talk to the project owner of the DxO PhotoLab 5 and all those people are using PC. And I will put the answer later tonight.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think
so. All right, buddy.
So everything worked well, better than 3 hours ago, which makes me very happy. Joseph, take care of yourself. Have a very good day. Thank you very much for your time. And
Thank you.
We hope to see you, Joseph, and all the person behind the computer very soon for a new live session. Take care. Thank you. And be safe.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.